I love writing for my own entertainment, but many people do it for a living. Some of these people write a dozen books a year, only to put someone else's name on it. Welcome to the Just Dumb Enough podcast, a show that acknowledges no one is always an expert by dispelling misconceptions with real experts. I'm your host as always, Colton Petrie. My guest today is Doug Crowe. Doug founded and runs a company specializing in ghostwriting. It's not journalism for the dead, although that would also be super cool. It's writing out books and novels for people who have a story and money, but no extra time. These ghostwriters work tirelessly to ensure that every book they touch can reach a wider audience and have a meaningful impact. Let's either start writing, or start getting paid for our writing. Welcome to the show, Doug Crowe.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to have you here. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for the audience?
Sure. My name is Doug Crowe. I founded a company about 15 years ago called Author Your Brand, where we ghostwrite and publish books for CEOs and founders. We also have a company called Authority Fusion, where we help those same authors or other ones get on stages, do TEDx talk, get in the media, and become, what I call slightly famous.
That is the goal, right? We all want to be slightly famous.
Well, we could talk about that quite a bit. I prefer to help them create impact than be famous, because there's so many people nowadays that call themselves influencers. Now they can sell a Coach bag because they're pretty, and that's great for them. I'm very happy, but most of our clients are people who've actually created something, done something, and they're known for making an impact on society or the world.
That's definitely better. You're correct.
Yeah.
So
I won't disparage them. It's not better. It's just different.
I think it's better. Official show stance, it's better.
It's fine. No problem.
So, a lot of people, I think we've heard the term ghostwriter or ghostwriting, but we're not really familiar with what that means at a base level.
It is a fuzzy area, quite frankly, because a lot of people I've talked to say, "Oh, I don't want to have someone else write my book. I want to write it." Yeah, well, what if you suck at it? You find out so you either need a good ghostwriter, journalist, editor team to help you out, or a really good editor, because it's very rare that our clients, CEOs and founders, have the skill and patience and time, quite frankly, to craft a well-done book. And I often say that Hollywood spends $100 million to keep our attention for just a couple of hours, and with visuals, and where you're expecting someone to hold their attention for 6 to 8 hours reading just your words. So you better be a really darn good storyteller to pull that off. There's some statistics, Colton, that 54% of books that are purchased are never opened. And of those that are open, only half are finished. I'm sure I've got a few of those myself. And I can blame myself or blame the author, but the bottom line is a ghostwriter is a person that can encapsulate an author's ideas, message, meaning, voice, style, and repurpose it in very particular and entertaining story arcs to pull the reader through and make it a compelling reason to keep reading it, basically. So a good ghostwriter can mirror a person's voice but make it better, or a good editor can do that as well. But most of my clients need the whole kit and caboodle.
Well, and when's the best time to involve a ghostwriter? Do you say right at the start of the journey, or do you kind of write out the story you want to tell and then hand it over to somebody?
Either way it works. It's probably better in our system. What we do is we have a journalist and a ghostwriter and an editor and a layout artist. We have different skill sets for everything that goes into a book. And the best time is early off. We actually focus on a lot of research first before we even introduce a journalist. There's a lot of research going on for our clients to make sure their title and cover and idea is actually going to be accepted by their audience. But yeah, always earlier is going to be better.
Well, and that seems like a lot of research to go into this to kind of say I want to mirror this person's speaking style and, correct the story. Yeah. Does a ghostwriter have to be extraordinarily flexible?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I've fallen into this trap a few times with my own clients where I'm reading what they submitted. Rather, some people submit their own stuff, or, hey, take a look at my blog and let's write about that. And so I'll take it and we'll try, wordsmith it and make it some, put some tension in there and maybe do an ellipsis and, make it interesting. Like, oh, I don't like that. I want it to read like my blog. Well, You want to stitch together, 30 blog posts for a book, then okay, but it's not going to read the same. But that's what they wanted. So I learned over the years to, go ahead and use our team and our skills and our experience to make their stories work. But if they've got a certain style they want to adhere to, who am I to try to change that? So I like to mirror a person's style, and it does take an exceptional writing and editing team to capture their style and not make it exactly the way they speak, because we don't listen the same way we read, and we don't talk the same way we write. So it's got to be done in a different manner, but you still have to capture their essence and style.
Well, and that seems very challenging. I mean, for a person to look at a book that has their name on it and then say like, oh, well, this isn't how I write. You'd be like, no, but this is better than the way you write because we did enough research to tell you that like your writing wasn't encapsulated.
We're always going to have the author's ideas in there in a very fundamental way. It's never going to be so removed from their style that it's unrecognizable. It's going to be their stories for sure. It's going to be their ideas, their strategy, their hooks, some of the characters, of course. So it's going to sound like them. When I say better, I mean it's going to read better than what they wrote or how they interviewed us, how we interview them.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day where I said I don't necessarily know where commas and semicolons go, but I use them a lot.
Yeah, I have a client right now, and he's a wonderfully brilliant man, and he speaks very, very well. And, we started working on his book. He didn't like it. He started to write some of his own stuff. And these sentences, my gosh, they're like a paragraph. There's like 8 points in one sentence. And when he speaks it, when I'm hearing him speak, it sounds great. When I'm reading it, I get lost. Like, I'm at the end of the sentence. I don't know where we started. So I'm going to capture his ideas, use his style. We're just going to break it up with the right grammar.
Well, and I assume ghostwriting applies to every area that has writing involved in it. Like it could be fiction, nonfiction, short stories, like all of that stuff could fall in the same category.
It certainly could. It probably lives more often in nonfiction than fiction, because most fiction stories do have a personal touch that people, hey, this is my imagination. I don't want anyone else to give me their imagination on it. So nonfiction is a good space for ghostwriting. Certainly there are examples in everything. I mean, AI is doing a lot of work copywriting right now. And sometimes people put their short, sales copy and blog posts as written by machine, which we can talk about that whenever you're ready. That's a topic.
Well, I mean, that's definitely something to jump into is like, a lot of people have found that AI will write, significantly better than them, but not necessarily like a human.
Absolutely. It's really good at spinning titles. We use it often to generate title ideas, maybe even to start a framework, but all the frameworks are the same. They're very myopic. They're very simple. AI is fast. It is probably faster than most humans can create stuff. I love that about it. But when I actually, looking for something which is creative, interesting, useful, and slightly entertaining, it's not there yet. So we still use AI for headlines and for maybe some outline material. But for the most part, we're capturing a person's story. And I'm sorry, I can still tell within, a paragraph if it was written by AI or not. And our clients, these are people who run multi-million-dollar companies. They represent, very valuable brands. They don't want to trust their message to a robot. So,
well, especially when you're like, it is such a wide discrepancy that you're like, I can look at it and immediately tell, well, then I'm not going to be pulled in any way if I already know, like, a person didn't even write this. You just copy and pasted it.
No, we've got a recent client submitted a manuscript. They just wanted us to, polish it and get it proofed and whatnot. And we're reading it, and it's like, in the realm of the industry that we're in, there's a plethora of ideas. I'm like, oh my God, the whole thing is written by AI for sure. So my editor says, let's just, ask if he doesn't mind, give us an extra couple of weeks and let's de-AI-ify it, right? So we took his ideas that the computer generated, which, some of his ideas, but he gave it good prompts, and we made it sound human by going through it word by word, taking the actual meaning of what was said there, and then making it sound human. My TEDx talk, which is not published yet, but will be soon, is titled "The Power of Humanity in the Shadow of AI." Because AI is a wonderful tool. You cannot dismiss it. You're not going to be able to get through business without it. But if you don't take responsibility for what you're creating, if you don't put a little humanity and heart and soul into what you're creating, then what are you doing? Why are you even here? You know,
Yeah.
no point.
Well, and it's one of those that I think people are like, well, AI is free, so I'm just going
Mhm.
to use it as much as
Yeah.
I want.
Hmm.
And I guess there is a point to that where you said, like,
Sure.
it'll spin up great titles and it could give you
Hmm.
a framework,
Yeah.
but if you're somebody who needs the kind of help that a professional ghostwriting team or,
Yeah.
even individual, I guess, is going to offer,
Yeah.
how much are you expecting to put into this, like on an investment scale?
It depends. Most of our clients, they're CEOs, founders of medium-sized companies. They're investing 25 to 50,000 to get a book and a platform built for them. And it's because a book is only one component. They also need a website, PR, media, a TEDx talk, a bunch of things to make sure that their message, their platform is comprehensive. So there's a lot that goes into it. The book is only one component of that. So yeah, you're not going to get away from this without investing five figures, at least with us. I've seen when we were starting to hire writers, I saw such a wide range of fees. It was crazy. The cheapest I saw to write a full size, 35, 40,000 word book was $500. Okay. This is before AI. And then the most expensive I saw was somebody quoted me $300,000 to write the same book. And I did a lot of analysis on the samples that I looked at, right? The $500 one, awful, right? It was just awful. The difference between the $300,000 sample and call it the $25,000 sample was negligible. I've read a lot. And I'm like, they're both pretty good. They're both like, I would be happy with either one of them. And the difference between 25 grand and 300 was so tremendous. Like, there's no reason to even look at that. That is, in my opinion, that's just somebody in this day and age. That is just taking advantage of a rich person.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. You're not going to get any referrals from that.
Yeah, you're like, is it 12 times better? Because that's an enormous jump. Like, if your
No.
book was 12 times better than a $25,000 book, like, you'd have an immediate world bestseller.
Well, you have a bestseller at 25. That's the thing about the diminishing return on that investment. At a certain point, it does not matter. Between 500 and 25 grand, huge difference. Even between 5 grand and 25 grand, we could see a significant difference. But right around that 25, $30,000 mark, it was great. I mean, I could look at that book and those samples from our writers, comparing it to New York Times bestsellers, no difference. It's all about the marketing, which is a difference between somebody which is super successful and someone just has a great book.
Well, I think a lot of people fall into that kind of trap, where they're either looking for like a very cheap ghostwriter to help
Yeah.
them finish a book that's probably
Mm-hmm.
not that well written to start with, versus somebody who's like, they're an impeccable author, but
Yeah.
their skill set ends at author, where they're like, I write and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I interviewed some people in my day and I had a radio show and, I think it was Robert Kiyosaki when I was talking to him. He said, I'm a best-selling author. I'm not a best-selling writer. So, and then Laura Langmeyer, same thing, 3 times New York Times bestseller. She admitted right on the air, never written a word. She's
Yeah.
always used ghostwriters and she's a New York Times best-selling author. So, but she's an amazing marketer, right? She knows how to get the word out there and stuff. And that's what she's good at. And didn't have the patience to sit and write for half a year.
Yeah. Well, and it
Yeah.
seems like a lot of skill sets that you'd have to be the person from A to B, like, is
Nobody's
so
got it.
many. Yeah.
There's not a single person, and I've been doing this for 15 years. We have graphic design team, we have proofing and layout artists, we have writers and journalists and editors. These are all different skill sets. Nobody has all of that. And even if they did, even if they were the Michelangelo of book, you take a year, maybe more, to do all of that. Plus the marketing side. You can have the greatest book in the world, but if no one's around to read it, what's the point? Again, you've got to have everything. It takes a lot of different. It takes a team for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's the difference between, like you said, writing maybe a book a year with
Mhm.
all of this going on versus like
Yeah.
maybe you're doing a book every 2 or 3 months. Like, I've seen some of those like very high profile authors that just crank
Mhm.
books out constantly.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, that's because they're only doing one part of this entire system and then a bunch of
Exactly.
other people handle it.
Exactly. Yeah, very true.
So, I mean, when did you get started in that?
Oh, I had how much time do we have? I studied radio, TV, film production at Northwestern, and upon graduation, I worked at CBS for a while, and I met Robert Allen, who's at the time was selling his book No Money Down, and had a seminar in town, a weekend workshop. You've seen those boot camp things, and I go up to after the interview at the TV station. And I said, hey, Mr. Allen, how's this real estate thing? Sounds pretty cool. How do I do that? Oh, come to my workshop this weekend. It's only $5,000 for the weekend. You can learn all this stuff. And I'm like, sir, I make $3.10 an hour here at this TV station. And to his credit, the man's a great guy. He said, well, go to the library and check out one of my books. And so I did. And I read his book and I loved it. And I did exactly what he said. Unlike most people who read something and go, oh, that's a cool idea, don't do anything. I took action and I started buying real estate and did that for many years. I had a radio show on ABC talking about real estate. I had my own academy where I taught real estate investing to individuals. And 2008 happened and it all went away. All the wealth, the experience, the business, the marriage, my sanity, everything's gone. And so during my little boohoo phase, clinical depression, I wrote a book, and the book was awful, just awful. And so I said, geez, how am I going to do this? I got to do something with my life. And I went back to some of the people that I had interviewed on the radio and said, how'd you guys get this book thing done? Right. So when Langmeyer and Kiyosaki said, oh yeah, we don't write, man. We have ghostwriters do it. So I met a friend and we started writing ghostwriting books for people. And boy, it's been a joy because I hear the coolest stories and I meet the most interesting people I could have imagined.
Well, I mean, that kind of sounds like this show. Every time I interview a new guest, I'm like, I don't know anything about ghostwriting, but I get to learn it today.
Yeah, you can. Sure.
And so,
I've interviewed hundreds of writers, and it's like dating, man. There's a lot of, lipstick on a pig people out there that just don't have a clue how to weave a story, how to make it compelling. And I always tell people it's got to be compelling, useful, informative, and if possible, entertaining. If you can get 3 out of those 4, you got to hit. It'll work. If you only have 1, it's just not going to work. You need to be, useful, interesting, compelling, and entertaining.
So, I mean, you talk about having developed these things for so many people and getting them out there. Does this kind of help to have the accessibility of like self-publishing? Great
question. So, before Amazon got super popular, all they had was books is all they had. They didn't have a KDP program where you can publish there. And everybody had a choice. Well, you can go to a regular publisher in New York, and there were hundreds of publishers at the time, and submit a manuscript, and hopefully they would take you on. Or you could, not do it. When Amazon say, hey, you can publish a book at Amazon right now for free and call it self-publishing if you want, but it's published through Amazon. But you can do it all for free. You can write your own manuscript. You can put it in their little machine. They can format it, click a button. You're a published author. So self-publishing has been the greatest thing and the worst thing. It's great because it's unlimited access, right? It's democratized publishing. Anybody can publish. That's great. And it's a worst thing because anybody can publish. So there's a lot of garbage out there. So we've always, focused on the higher end clients. So I'm not worried about that, but I still get questions occasionally about traditional publishing. And I used to have to defend what we do. I'm like, well, getting permission to publish your book is not necessary anymore because we can just do it for you. It's not the marketing, not the content. And still I have some old people, I want a traditional publisher. So what we did to solve that issue is actually I launched a publishing company in New York. It's got a New York address in Manhattan, and it's called Gratis Publishing. Because traditional publishers, if you are lucky enough, fortunate enough to get with one of them, they own your IP, they own your copyright, they own the future work that you do. You have to sign, first right of refusal on your next project. And in exchange for that, you might get an advance and you get a small single-digit royalty. But hey, I'm with Random House, I'm with a publisher, I'm with Penguin. That's great. And self-publishing, you keep all the money, but there's no distribution there. It's just Amazon's all it is. You don't get airport deals, Walmart, corporations, nonprofits, none of that's available to you unless you do it yourself. So traditional publishing, self-publishing. That's been your choices. This hybrid area where a lot of my friends in the industry play, they call it hybrid publishing where, hey, I'll publish you and I'll give you 30% of your royalties or, even 90%, whatever it is. And when I launched Gratis, we decided to say, listen, I know what people want. They want 100% of the royalties, 100% of the IP, and some of them would like to have that imprint of a New York publishing house. So we created this company, and there you go. Anybody can publish now, have a New York imprint, and keep all the money.
Well, it seems like one of those, I've heard people talk about going to traditional publishing and they're like, my royalties on an $8 book is 25 cents or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is like, that's horrific.
It's horrific even when you self-publish. Amazon keeps about half. Oh. Imagine investing, let's say you invest 25 to 50 grand in doing your book. And so, okay, Amazon will keep half the money. I might get $7 or $8 per copy. You got to move a lot of copies just to recoup your investment. So in the nonfiction world, sure, we can do that by doing bulk sales to associations, corporations, nonprofits. But the real money is not, I always tell people, it's not, you don't make money from your book, really. You make money because of your book. So if you're a business person, you've got other things you've been doing your whole life. Use your book as your plant the flag. I'm a leader in this industry. I'm slightly famous, whatever you want to say about this area, this topic. Here's my book that showcases it. And if you want to have a conversation, hire me. I've got a 5 or 6 figure consulting gig ready to go. Sure. Now, most of my clients, they can, pick up 1 or 2 clients from their book and it pays for it. And even if a person is servicing a lower ticket item, a couple grand, it's still doable because now you can move even 100 books and recoup your investment pretty easily.
Well, because there's a huge difference in there. If you said like, okay, it cost me $10,000 to do all the writing, marketing, etc. for my book. Like, okay, if I'm only making $5 a book, I got to sell a whole lot of books to get anywhere near like where I need to get.
A couple thousand easily. Yeah.
And I can't imagine most books sell like that. Like your average book probably doesn't hit like, 5,000 sales or something.
I haven't read the recent data, but I read years ago that the average book sells 250 copies. Now, when I say average, they're taking all the books, including J.K. Rowling. So if you stripped out the top 1%, I bet it's way fewer than 250. It's probably less than 100. I don't know, but it's not enough to make a living, let alone recoup getting your cover designed. It's a book is not a fast path to money for sure.
Well, and that's where you have this, like, if you have other marketing ventures tied to the book, suddenly it's fine. Because if you're like, I got paid $3,000 to go speak at a college or something, like, okay, well, I just recouped 1/3 of what I spent just because I put the book out and now have a thing.
And plenty of speakers will use that as not a trick, but as a way to help the event organizer take care of their fees. Like, hey, my fee is normally $5,000. However, if your budget, your committee doesn't like that, I'll speak for free if you commit to purchasing X number of books. Now they go, I get to talk and something tangible I can give to my audience. So it makes it easier for a speaker to get more engagements if you have a book.
Well, and especially in like today's age where there are ranking systems, that has to help, right? Because you're like, I just sold 200 books, in the drop of a hat. Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to move books, and there's a lot of ways to monetize your message. I've got some materials I can send to your audience that has like 40 ways to make money from your book. But the real magic of it is you've got to have something interesting to say that people actually want to read about. And that's where the research piece comes in. That we poll and survey your audience before the book is written to make sure they care about what you want to say. And if we're really smart, and half the time our clients agree to this, we actually include your readers in the process of creating your book. And what I mean by that is that if you just say, hey, I want to write about this topic. Okay, what if nobody cares about it? Oh, they do. Are you sure? I'm pretty sure. Let's just double check it. Let's do a survey and ask them and show some covers and get the feedback. And then let's also target some large organizations. When we talk to the editor of a magazine or the leader of a specific nonprofit or an association and get their opinion on this, maybe they got a story they want to share. So we've done this a few times with clients, and boy, it works really well because when that book comes out, you call them up. Hey, Bob, or what was her name? I think Karen. I forgot her name. American Cancer Society. You're mentioned in this client's book like 8 times. Can I send you a copy? Oh yeah, let me see it. Oh, this is great. Could you come speak at our conference? I'm so glad you asked. So without pitching, by just collaborating and giving, author speakers are going to get a lot more attention because they're doing it right from the onset. They're not waiting to write their book and then market it. They start planting the seeds of marketing early on to the right audience.
Fantastic. So When you're looking at all of this, you somewhere in here made that transition to say, like, I've been loving writing with other people, for other people,
Mhm.
making works much better. When did you decide, like, I want my name back on the cover of a book again?
Ooh, that's a good question because the old shoemaker's kid story, right? We've grown our company now. I've got it's small, but we've got like 10 employees full time, a bunch of part timers. And the last time I actually ghost wrote one of my clients' books was about 4 years ago. We have other people doing that. So for me personally, when I'm going to have my name in a book, I'm doing one this year. I might be doing two. We'll see how it flushes out because I'm hiring my own team to do it because I don't have time to run a business and write a book. I'm eat my own dog food, as one of my friends likes to say. So we'll have one coming out this year, maybe two if I'm speed up the second one. We'll see.
And then obviously there's like two big goals I think people set when they're like, I'm going to put a book out.
Mm-hmm.
They, number one, they want to see like bestseller next
Yeah.
to their name.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, they want to see like award winner or,
Yeah.
like something
Yeah.
like that. How
Mm-hmm.
attainable are either of those? And do
Boy,
they
that's a
matter?
great topic, Colton. I'll tell you, I used to really push the Amazon bestseller because we have launched well over 500 Amazon bestsellers, number one spot. All of our clients who desire that can achieve that. We've had a few books win awards from places. But here's the danger and the problem with that whole idea, and the reason our industry is just inundated with crap is because people are chasing the acknowledgement, the accolade, without doing the work. And I'm guilty because I've had people want, no, okay, fine, you can extra money will make you a bestseller for a week. The next week, you're nobody. It's like going to a pawn shop and buying an Oscar trophy. Is what it is. And I'm pretty sure like 99% of everybody who offers you become a Wall Street Journal, Amazon bestseller, they're faking it. Like we have done. We don't do it anymore, but we used to like, okay, we're going to go ahead and compress some things and do some stuff and make sure it's the right category and make you a bestseller for a week. Now we have book clubs and we have some other things in place with some PR and whatnot to actually get sales to make it happen. But a lot of people, they fake it. They buy books and, bulks. They do it in a sneaky way. And there's articles all over the internet about this. There's a guy who wanted to show how dumb this whole thing was about being an Amazon bestseller. He took a picture of his foot, published it as a book, and became a bestseller. So becoming a best-selling author is a great goal. We can do it. We do it authentically, but it costs money to do it. The best way to do it is to create really good content and have a really tight strategic marketing plan to get your message out there. And the lagging indicator can be bestseller status, award. The leading indicator, what gets you there, good content, exceptional marketing. If you do those things, you can hit that. But I ask a question of people who are talking about, can I be a New York Times bestseller? I'm like, yeah, you can. But what's it going to take? I'm like, a lot. I mean, I've got a friend who does that and he charges $250,000 and you can become a New York Times bestseller. He knows where to buy them, where to distribute them, how to do all that, but it's all fake. Wouldn't you? And I ask, okay, so what's your question? Would you rather be a New York Times bestseller or impact 100,000 people? Choose. You can't have both. And if they choose New York Times bestseller, they're not my client. I'm like, you know what? Your ego is bigger than your desire to make an impact in the world. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging. It's just not what we do. We focus on people who want to make a difference in the world. And a short story on that is I had a guy call me up to want to do a book. And okay, what do you do? And he told me a story that was so incredible. I almost didn't believe it. I'm looking him up on Wikipedia as he's talking because it was so crazy. I'm the youngest person ever to be recruited by Castro to be a spy, double agent of the CIA. We printed counterfeit money by the millions and did all these deals, Oliver North, all this crazy espionage stuff. Like, that's amazing. He waxed on for an hour about this. At the end of the phone call, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. What kind of budget you have? Oh, I got a big budget. I got 6 figures to put in this thing. I'm ready to go if you are. I'm like, wow, cool. My business coach was listening to my recordings of this call and some other ones. And he's like, I listened to some of your calls, and the first guy you're very excited about. It was really a good call. The second one, you're kind of standoffish, almost cold to the guy. What's up with that? Oh, guy was just talking about his ego. He didn't have anything to give back to society. It just didn't interest me. Why'd you talk to him then? I don't know. I'm in business to write books. I figured I'd talk to him because Stop talking to people that you don't want to work with. Oh, that's 30% of my calls. He says, stop it. As soon as I did that, business went up 300% that year.
Wow.
So creating a book that creates an impact is a long way to get there, is so much more valuable than chasing the medal. Chasing the medal is great for the Olympics, but remember, even those people have to do the work to get there. They don't just buy it or sneak it, or they have to earn it. So if you want to earn that badge of being a bestseller or win an award, go create good content. Serve your audience selflessly. Don't chase the badge, chase the impact.
Speaking of impact, you've all heard me talking about Magic Mind before. There's a lot to say about its science and its flavor and whatever else, but really, I just want to speak to how much of a difference it makes. No sales pitch, script, nonsense, whatever you've heard on these other shows. I drink this stuff every day because it genuinely helps me to feel better, to get moving, to stay focused, to not just wander around in a haze with my days blurring together. I've been lucky enough to have them as a sponsor twice, and with any luck, they'll keep me around. But more than that, I hope you'll give it a chance, a moment of your time to check it out, even if you aren't convinced it's right for you. Discounts in the show notes. And getting back to impact over medals. Certainly, and I think there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of bad actors out here where it's like you could fake your sales, become a bestseller for an hour, drop off the face of the planet, but you hit the number. So you're like, well, there's your title. Go ahead, have fun. Or like, I was a New York Times bestseller because I sold X number of books. Like, well, you basically bought your own books and gave them away.
Yeah.
It's like, do you care? Because I don't feel like anyone, really like connected with your book.
Versus let's just blame social media on this whole thing of being seen. Yeah. Everybody, before the social media, it was a big deal to be on TV. Now here we are doing a show. We're on TV technically. We're doing a video show. And a few years ago, this would have been a big deal. Nothing saying it's not. I'm just saying that since everybody can do it, it's a lot more popular, very easy to do. And because of that, not as valuable. So the value comes in scarcity. And that's what makes impact, right? Oh, that's scarce. So that's why people continue to chase something which is really not even relevant anymore. It's like, why are you chasing this bestseller thing? Well, because it means something. Yeah, it did. Nowadays, not so much.
Well, and that's the same thing. I've seen some of these where they're like, well, I'm an award-winning author. Yeah. I'm like, what's the award? And they're like, the Blasies. I'm like, what is a Blassie? And they're like, I don't know. It's just a company that gives out awards for writing books. I'm like, okay, so you paid to like say that you won an award.
Again, they're chasing that significance in their life. I want to be seen as somebody special and important. And that is dangerous because it leapfrogs over making an impact. You're not important because somebody says so. You're important because you help somebody, you've done something. It's so clear to me now, but it wasn't years ago. I used to really push on the bestseller thing because people wanted it and we had a way to get it done quickly. Now it takes us more time, more money to do it, but I really focus on impact more than anything else.
Yeah. I was going to say the people that you reach to hit that bestseller mark care a lot more. It's not just like a hollow thing. You're like, no, people actually listened to what you said. They read the book and applied the knowledge.
Imagine, faking it and then someone's read, go, that's a bestseller. That sucked. That's a double whammy to your brand value. Because now they say, well, he's a bestseller. Is it real? It hurts everybody, not just you. Yeah. So focus on creating something important and interesting and useful and slightly entertaining. You'll be in better shape.
Well, and do you ever work with people to make, because I imagine there is an advantage in multiple books. Because if you're like, oh, I could pitch one book and come talk to your audience, or I have two kind of diverse books and I could talk to a larger audience.
Yeah. We have a good percentage of our clients always end up doing a second and the third book. It's usually because they have such a wide range of experience that they can't put it all in one book. So it's more based on legacy than anything else. Topic wise, I've read some books and we've written some books where I was like, whoa, this one chapter could be a whole book. But I got to be cautious because most entrepreneurs I work with, probably 90%, have at least 5 books in their head. And that's probably one of the reasons they hire us, because they can't, which one do I do first? I don't know. They're all great ideas. Like, let's let your audience decide. Let's do our surveys, our polls, our focus group, and we'll know which one is the first one you should do, whether it's the broad-based evergreen one or a solo book about a specific topic. Your audience will tell you what they need this year.
Well, I have to imagine that affects the impact. When you're like, you had one book that was extremely impactful, the next time your book comes out, you've already got a built-in audience.
Yeah,
You don't have to
absolutely.
do all that other work. You're just like, look, these people already want it. Now let's find some other people that also want it.
Right. It not only works in the, in the regular ecosystem of marketing, but Amazon is, I think they got a patent on the one-click checkout, but their upsells are brilliant. When you buy a book, they're always going to have some other ones you might like right below the checkout. You like this? If you like this one, you might like these too. And when we go to a bookstore, we hardly ever walk out with just one book. I'm going to get 2 or 3. And Amazon does that digitally online. So if you've got more than one book, you're going to pick up incremental sales on your first book by selling your second one and vice versa. So having one book is great. It's still rare. Not most people don't do it. But when you do, if you can have the time and patience and funds to do a second or third book, you're going to see a bump on all of them as you roll them out, year by year, quarter by quarter, whatever your pace is.
Certainly. And, I mean, you're in the business of writing books, like constantly writing books.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like there is a scarcity of topics to run into? Like, you're like, we already did this book twice.
Oh my gosh. That happens all the time. Oh, I've got a great idea. I'm like, oh my God, I've heard that one 12 times. There is nothing new under the sun except one thing. And this is the important part, because when I'm interviewing people to even work together, okay, what do you want to talk about? And I ask them these 2 questions and always get a big pause when I ask it. First question is, what can you say that hasn't already been said? I get a blank stare. That's already been said. It's already been said. Okay, don't worry. I'm not talking you out of doing a book. I'm giving you perspective on what we should do here. Okay, why should they listen to you? And I usually get an answer from that. And that's the answer. The answer is not that you've got something brand new to say, but your perspective and your unique experience is rare. No one's lived Colton's life. No one's lived my life. What I've been through, no one else has been through. And that is unique. Now, if you can package that up and make those stories relevant to a topic, you've got something unique and maybe useful. Because perhaps the last Tony Robbins book I read, maybe I didn't like it. Maybe I'm not a fan. But this other guy has a very similar topic. I like his style more. I've met him in person. He's a cool guy. I'm not saying Tony's not. I'm just saying different topics, or same topics from different people can still work, because not everybody relates to the top person in your industry.
Well, I have to imagine some of that is the diversification of how you write, or, how someone writes for you, where you say, like, this person's very long form, like one chapter is 30 pages versus the next person. You're like, one chapter is 2 pages.
Right.
Extraordinary.
That has changed
digestible.
a lot, right? In our social fabric, we used to be a lot more patient, and we'd, wait 20 minutes for a bus, and we'd send a letter to somebody and wait a week for a response. And now if I don't get a response from my instant message within a couple seconds, I'm like, what's wrong? Are you okay? So the speed with which we consume information also relates to the speed with which we are looking at it and writing it. So I'm looking at web copy, a lot of short one-liners, punchy to give you, because you're scrolling and you want to interrupt somebody and read this real fast. So you keep it short. And books, most people assume you're going to spend some time consuming a book. And I will say audiobooks are no longer a nice to have. It's required to publish your book in print, digital, and audio now, because audiobook sales, double-digit growth rates. Because I listen to books more often than I read now. I'm cutting the grass, working out, I'm going to listen to a book. I can actually multitask because whatever I'm doing is mundane, but the book keeps my brain firing. So, yeah.
Well, and that's one of those, like, the less things you have to focus on, to consume content, the more engaged your brain is, right? So if you're listening or just reading a book, like, you will be more engaged than if I was watching a movie, because it has a visual, it has a sound, it's got a, whole thing to it. So, like, your impact actually probably goes up, in having people, like, you're literally in their head.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Your synaptic nerves are firing more when you're actively doing something. I was working out the other day, And my trainer's like, no, now we're going to do push-ups, but not on the floor. You're going to balance on a ball. Like, what? Yeah, do push-ups on a ball. So I'm balancing while I'm pushing. And there's a bunch of more physiological things happening there. Same thing as when you're reading. I mean, I was reading and listening to Alex Hormozi's book. And he suggests listen to a book as you're reading it for real comprehension. Because if you're getting a visual and an auditory input at the same time on that topic, you're less likely to forget it. So as an author, think about this. I've done this about half a dozen times where I'm reading a book or listening to it. We'll start with the listening one first. Listening to the book. I'm like, oh, it's a really good point. How do I remember it? How do I highlight it? I'm going to go buy the hard copy, right? Or I'll buy the Kindle version first and look for it. So I'm buying the same book in 2 or sometimes 3 formats because it is good storytelling, it's useful, entertaining, and I need that information so I can scratch it out and repurpose it for myself. Take the lessons and apply it, basically. So having a multiple formats for your book, it's a great idea, not just for revenue, but for comprehension and everything else.
Well, and it seems like, as much as the short and punchy things like grab attention online, people kind of still have this desire for very long content where they're like, podcasts are going up, book sales are going up. Like, people want to spend some time on stuff that they actually care about. So it's that impact again, circling back in this whole conversation.
Yeah. If you're compelling, if you got a really cool story or message, people will be patient for it. When my son first told me to listen to Joe Rogan podcast, I was like, 3 hours? No way, man. He goes, Dad, just check it out. You'll love it. I'm like, all right. And it took me a month or so. I put one on. I'm like, whoa, this is interesting. So, and I was at the podcast. Have you ever been to Podcast Movement? Big convention?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know what year it was, but a data scientist walked up on stage on the main stage there. And he's like, well, I finally figured out the secret to getting your shows to go viral, to go really big. And he went a long preamble, right? He spent 2 minutes talking about the millions of data points he's collected, the 1,000 shows he's analyzed. I got the secret. Everyone's getting their pen and paper. What's the secret here, right? He said, here it is. Ready? Create good content. That's it. And I'm like, oh, shit, you got me. It's so true. Have you ever seen an ad for Joe Rogan's show?
No.
It's the most popular podcast out there, more popular than some TV stations. Never run an ad that I know of. His point is ironclad. You create good quality, useful, purposeful, entertaining content, people are going to consume it.
There's a lot of that especially in the podcast world. When I started, I had 0 audience, no outside impact. I had no social media. I'm nobody, but I'm making a thing. And so I'm like, well, as long as 10 people are here, I don't care. I'll do it forever.
Yeah. Right.
And there's amount of that just the longer you do it, the more people show up because it compounds. And it has to be the same thing in books as well, right?
It's true for everything. I've talked to some people who really know SEO and algorithm stuff. They say the same thing. Don't worry about what you publish. Just publish consistently. The algorithm and the internet recognizes consistency as a marker for, pushing up the stream. So if you're consistent with a podcast, with authoring, with your social stuff, with video, whatever it is, consistency is really important. And like you mentioned, it's not just for the extra audience. It helps you. It helps you clarify ideas and get it out there and meet new people and have fun. So whatever you're doing, whether it's writing or podcasting or video, it doesn't matter. But be consistent and stick to it if you like it. My show, I've got an author brand show for authors and CEOs come on. And very rarely, but occasionally I ask what my audience numbers are. And I don't know. That's not why I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I do it to meet interesting people, period. And I was nervous at first, Colton. When I had, background in the radio world where I had, tens of thousands of people a week listening to me. So when I looked at the podcast thing back in the day, I'm like, I recorded some interviews. I was about to go live with them. I got to produce it. I got to market it. That's a lot of work. I'm not going to do it. I had these files with some people. I'd never published it. And one of my marketing friends said, you're looking at it backwards, Doug. Don't think of it as a radio show for sponsors and getting a lot of audience. Do it for lead gen. What? He goes, yeah. Just talk to cool people. You have a chance to talk to them. What happens after an hour? I like Colton. He's a cool cat asking good questions. Got a good studio there. We instantly have a little connection. Now I trust you because we showed up, we do things. So like, trust are important, and especially in our hyper fast internet world of distrusting everybody nowadays and the AI and deep fakes. Trust is a much more important currency than anything else. So I use the show for meeting cool people.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those that, like you said, it clarifies ideas over time. The
Yeah.
thing you start with, whether it's book or a podcast or
Right.
show, whatever you're doing, like it may end very differently.
Mine
You're
did.
like 7 years down the road and you're like, so this show is nowhere near what I started, but I do like it.
I want to delete my first 6 because I was like, oh, it was during the pandemic when I launched it, right? I'm going to go ahead and do I call it cocktails and conversations. And I was going to mix a drink and have a conversation, make it like a lounge show. And, drinking like that every week is not a good idea. I canned it and talked to somebody. Doug, just go with your brand right now. Author your brand. I'll call you also that. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, are there any other like huge myths or misconceptions or stuff that you see people, constantly like ask you, hey, is this thing true? And you're like, no, that one's not true at all.
The biggest challenge I have, quite frankly, is I'm pretty optimistic guy. And when someone tells you their idea, I instantly see the future. Like, oh my God, that's a good one. Oh, I can see this going to this association, this convention, this trade group. I know 10 corporations that would love this. I can instantly see them exceeding their wildest expectations. But you'd be very surprised to know that a lot of these guys and gals who run 8, 9, 10-figure companies, they're like, I don't know if anybody cares about what I have to say. Like, dude, you built a company of $250 million in the last 15 years from scratch. I want to know about that. I want to interview you. This is so cool. But a lot of people have this, they're very modest of what they've done. They don't think anybody cares about that. I'm like, oh no, people want to know. I mean, you look at the success of Shark Tank, people would love to see, ideas come to life. So the biggest misconception I've seen out there is that people don't think they're actually worthy enough for a book. And everybody's got a story. Whether the story is marketable or not, that's different. If it's just I've read some manuscripts where like, this is your diary, right? There's no lessons here. It's just your story. And those don't sell that well unless you're a celebrity or something. But if you've got a story to tell with a point to it, with something useful the reader can actually use, then you've got something. You can make it work.
Yeah.
So misconception number 1 would be like, you do have a good enough story. Misconception number 2 would be the opposite. Like, is it good enough to teach somebody something that they'll find useful? Because if it's just your story, no. I mean, I've done only one of those successfully. It's because the story was amazing. He was from Afghanistan. He was working with the president of Afghanistan on their business relations with the UN and stuff. And he's there in August when those people falling off that plane. He's at the airport watching it. His story of escaping that, it's like, the movie Argo?
Yeah.
Okay. It's about 10 times more tense than that, what he's gone through to see people getting machine gunned and escaping the Taliban on 3 or 4 occasions. And he was on their list. I mean, they're looking for him because he's got billboards up around Kabul with his picture on there. He's calling his friends saying, go spray paint those billboards. They don't know what it look like. He had friends out there defacing his own billboards because he's on a hit list. They're looking for him. So that was a story like I had to tell it. I'm like, this is so cool.
Well, and I think that's one of those is like, the autobiography section, like you really could cut out 90% of the stuff that's in there because you're like, Viktor Frankl has a great book, but it's about a couple years of his life realistically. Where you're like,
right.
He doesn't talk about, all of his life leading up to being in a camp. He just talks about being in the camp. So it's like, that's very interesting. If I had read about his teen years, I may not have cared about that book at all.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You don't have to actually be an historical figure to make an impact with a story. I've run across people that have done crazy. Like one of my clients, George Jones, he's a former NFL player. That's always a good thing. Hey, former NFL guy, came from the hood, poverty, it's very much like The Blind Side. Somebody took him in and got him. And he told me he was like, a high school kid and bawling the first time he had to get on an airplane because he's so scared to get on an airplane. He'd been on an airplane in his life at 18. And his journey to going from, living in the projects, getting beat up all the time, drugs, all that stuff, to becoming what he is now, which is an advocate for dads, because he's an amazing father. It's a great journey and story. And his book is all about that. We put in there like very small points about fatherhood. That's his main thing. He's got a nonprofit. He talks about it. He speaks all over the country on it. But it's 90% story, because it is good and it is relevant. So it can work if it's relevant, but if it's just a diary with no point to it, yeah, save it for your grandkids or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's an excellent point to kind of leave people to ponder the nature of their own writings. If you're interested in it, like, this is a wonderful thing to look at, because now all the different steps you're going to need to be aware of.
Right.
Like, it doesn't stop at writing.
And quite frankly, think about this. Most people don't know the name of their great-grandparents. Certainly they don't know their great-great-grandparents. And time goes pretty quickly, and that's going to be you and me someday. So, is someone going to go through the social media feeds from 100 years ago and go look down that? No, it's people very present. So even documenting your diary, your story, your journey, at some point, it's a good idea. It's not something we focus on, but it's a good idea for your legacy, for your grandkids, whatnot, to have that book about your story, even if it's not that exciting. I think it'd be nice to know. All I got was a couple of stories about my great grandfather from my dad told me a couple, but that's it. A couple of stories.
Yeah, it almost seems like an immortality project to say.
Yeah, we use the word legacy, but immortality is also very appropriate. You want to, keep the family name going. Well, you better publish a book about it, even if it's not useful or entertaining. Just documenting it and publishing it, it's not a bad idea. Yeah. You have time for it when you're, 75 or 80. I recommend it.
You think of the branching, life of some people. You're like, okay, great grandpa lived however many 100, 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We start dialing back down, like, he's got 700 grandkids or something, down the line. And you're like, well, if each person in the family had one really, really good story, you could make a book out of that without an issue.
Absolutely. That's a good idea.
And you're like, here's the history of our family lineage from X to Y.
Yeah. It's a good idea.
Feel free to steal that.
It's not our wheelhouse right now, but somebody's listening can do it.
Right.
Somebody take a look at some patriarch and look at all his offspring, have them all give one story. That's a good idea.
Yeah. Somebody put me in the co-author notes or something at the end of the book.
Yeah, that's right. I got those here from Colton.
Well, Doug, thank you so much for being here. This has been super insightful, and I've really appreciated talking to you.
My pleasure.
Why don't you make sure people can find you if they're looking for more from you?
Sure. I've got two companies. The first one is the Author Your Brand, authoryourbrand.com. For if you want to get a book done, we'll have a conversation about it. We've got a free research piece we'll do for you at no cost to help you research your idea, see if it's viable or not. The other one we have is Authority Fusion. It's a free site where you can go and get a lot of ideas, information, tutorials, checklists, curriculum on writing, publishing, speaking, getting the media. All that information there is at no cost. I do that to help my clients out that can't afford me and give them resources to do just what they want, whether it's writing or speaking or getting the media. So we're putting podcast directories on there as well. So I'll make sure I add yours to it. So authoryourbrand.com and then authorityfusion.com are the two ones to go to. And if they want to just message me directly, they can go and do that at doug@dougcrowe.com. That's Crowe with an E.
Yes. And I will put all that stuff in the show notes. So if you're, like me, you have the goldfish memory to remember links from one page to another on your phone, you can just drop down and click on it, and it'll take you right to either of those or both of those, especially if you're looking at getting into this industry. But Doug, thank you so much for your time. I've appreciated this immensely.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It seems almost counterintuitive to be a career writer who never gets credit for their own work. But considering the average book sales topping out before you sell 300 copies, it's actually much more profitable to write for people who already have money and a story. In other news, August is now here, and rankings have updated a bit. Number 1, the United States, now led by New York, Illinois, and California. Number 2, England of the United Kingdom. Number 3, New Zealand. Number 4, Canada, led by Ontario, with British Columbia just barely behind. And number 5, Australia, with Victoria now leading New South Wales. And for what it's worth, Ghana actually beat New Zealand in a last-minute victory in July. So, congrats on New Zealand for picking it up big time this month. Special thanks again to Magic Mind for their continued support. Honestly, go check it out. Like I said, even if it's not something you're necessarily interested in or you don't think it'll help you, because you just never know. So check it out. Otherwise, that's it for this week. Have a great week, a great weekend, and I'll see you all back here next week for another new episode. Until the next episode, pretty pleased do all those things that help the show grow, like rating, reviewing, liking, and subscribing. Remember, you can reach out to dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social medias if you want to reach me personally. But most importantly, stay dumb.